Today's message I've been planning on since the 4th of July. On the morning of the 4th, I had a little extra time and I was just meditating on some things that I was reading about, and all of a sudden the phrase contagious Christianity came into mind. It's a title of a book I had read or I had looked at a long time ago. And today I want us to go to Acts chapter 29. If you have your Bibles, I want you to open them up. If you have it on your phone, I want you to get it. And I want us to go to Acts chapter 29, which is where we'll be talking about today. But as I was looking at the idea of contagious Christianity, I began to look at the book of Acts and how things started so small and all the things that happened all the way through it. So I want us today to go to Acts 29. Everybody found it? We got it? What? Didn't find it? Why not? Keep going, Mike. You're still looking. Keep going. Keep going. Get there, Mike. Hurry up. I'm watching you. Either that or you're doing YouTube and you're just telling us you're watching it. Okay? Found it yet? Acts 29. Got it? I'm just waiting to see if Mike finds it here. It's not there. Oh, Mike is good. I can't believe he did this to me. It looked like you got Marcel's tanning bed there looking at you. Okay. Okay. Now, I want you to look at the last two verses of Acts 28, okay? This is kind of interesting. It says, for the next 2 years, Paul lived in Rome at his own expense. He welcomed all who visited him, boldly proclaiming the kingdom of God and teaching about the Lord Jesus Christ, and no one tried to stop him. Now, what's unusual about this is compared to the other books of the New Testament? Do you see anything unusual there? Well, he did it at his own expense. Someone said the other day, no, that's not it. Here's the deal. You read through most of the books in the New Testament, and it ends with, and now I just want to say goodbye to Myrtle and all these others, you know, that are here in the church in their house there, and the peace of the Lord be with you, blah, blah, blah. But the book of Acts is the only New Testament book that really has no formal ending. It doesn't say, thank you, we love you, see you later, nothing. It just kind of goes. And as you read different people, they say the reason for that is very simple. The book of Acts is still being written. The book of Acts continues. Write this down, and I gave you two whole spaces to write. You got to write the whole sentence. I know you're not used to that, but do it anyway, okay? Acts 29, the stories yet to be written in the 21st century through your life, my life, and our church. Again, the stories yet to be written in the 21st century through your life, my life, and our church. Just think, the things that you and I do right now, the times that we share Christ and the things that God does through us, literally in a very real sense, is just being added on to the book of Acts. Now, we're not writing this down. It's not inspired by the Holy Spirit. No, but he is writing it somewhere, and at some point in time, when Jesus returns and we're all in heaven with him, someone is going to announce, okay, the acts of the followers of Christ have now ended. But in the meantime, you and I are still writing the Acts of the Apostles. Now, I don't know how that makes you feel. I'm kind of excited. I get kind of excited thinking about this. The days in which we are living are very interesting days, and particularly in the United States of America. In fact, as I do some reading about the U.S., I find three different titles that are given to the U.S. And as I read, you'd find things here and there in different parts. And then in one guy, I found in his article, he talked about all three of these things. So I'm going to quote him today. The guy's name was Stephen Matson. And first of all, he describes the United States of America, and he uses the term that many have used as a Christian nation. Write that down. Christian nation. But this is what he said. The problem with evaluating Christianity based on numbers is that it simply doesn't work. It doesn't reflect the true essence of Christ. When people claim that we were once a great Christian nation, they're using a revisionist history and glossing over the notorious corporate sins of our past. Ever since the founding fathers inhabited the original 13 colonies, our nation's history has been littered with genocide, war, slavery, segregation, civil rights abuses, racism, sexism, corporate and political corruption, environmental disasters, organized crime, land grabs, church abuse scandals, and a variety of other horrific events. If this is what a Christian nation looks like, I hope we never become one again. Ooh, that one hurt. You hear a lot about Christian nation, and the U.S. was a Christian nation, but he says you have to look at the whole thing. You can't just look at a little piece and navigate and say, there we were. Yes, maybe there was a time where we used the Bible in the public arena more than we do now, but to say we were a Christian nation, I don't think Jesus was ever happy with the stuff going on in our country, nor is he today. Our history is not a reflection of Jesus. So I don't think we want to grab that title of Christian nation. Another one that you hear thrown around a lot is what they call a post-Christian nation. A post-Christian nation. Said the concept of post-Christianity revolves around data related to Christian power, civil religion, and official census polling, but barely touches on the spiritual elements related to faith and hardly quantifies the qualities that Jesus exuded throughout his life. It's judging a religion based on corporate scales and lenses and metrics, not spiritual ones. Let me give you an example. How many of you remember here in Miami when on Sunday you wouldn't go to Publix because Publix was closed, and they advertised on Sunday, we're closed so that our employees can go to church. Remember that? How many of you remember that? That's right. And some of you are going, huh? Publix is closed? And the only ones that were open were the ungodly Winn-Dixie people. Okay? Now, but even the Winn-Dixie people, there was one aisle, remember? And they would put tape on it. You couldn't go down the beer and wine aisle because of the blue laws. All of y'all thought those were the Smurfs, but that was not it. The blue law, we sold no alcohol on Sundays. Wasn't that so Christian of us? I just feel so much better. And there was a time, again, right here in Miami, where what was happening in the public arena more closely somewhat resembled what people would have liked. In fact, when I moved up from Peru to Denton, Texas, which is where I met Beverly, in Denton, Texas, that county, the entire county, was called a dry county. Now, what does that mean? That means nowhere in any grocery store, in any restaurant, in anything was beer, wine, or any other alcoholic substance sold at all. It was a dry county. And some of you are going, you got to be kidding me. No, everyone drove across the county line to get all their stuff and then drove back into the dry county. And they felt so much more Christian in that county. You know, that was the heathen county over there, and we're the Christian county. No, we just had more people die on the road going back and forth to the other counties. But that's the reality. And people look at things like that and say, well, once we were a Christian nation, but now we're a post-Christian nation. There's a third term that's thrown around, and to be honest, I kind of like this one the best. It's a pre-Christian nation. What if instead of a post-Christian nation, we're actually a pre-Christian one? Let's put hope in that we've yet to see how God can use American believers to positively affect our world in a way that radically follows Christ's example. We've made many mistakes in the past, but maybe God can help redeem our future. Let me tell you something. The Bible says that at the appointed time, Jesus came into this world. Let me tell you something. The appointed time was not a great time. The appointed time was not Christian at all. There was nothing about the Roman Empire that was friendly to Christianity. In fact, if you've done even a little bit of study, you know that during that time they blamed Christians for everything, from burning Rome and everything. So they would take them, they would throw them in prison, they would put them out in the wherever they would put them, and they would throw the animals out there, and they would do all kind of horrible things. There was nothing Christian about it, and yet, in that extremely antagonistic environment, Christianity grew. It not only grew, but as you're going to see in a minute, the Roman Empire appears in red, and Christianity appears in white. Now, when you get red and white, you mix together, what do you get? You get pink. So as you see this video, I want you to notice that from red and then pink, it means that Christianity is taking over and ultimately, completely eats up the red. In fact, I'm going to give you the history of Christianity, the spread of the gospel from the year 30 AD to 2015 in 1.5 minutes. Now, those of you who don't like long, boring history lessons, this is your history lesson that you're going to love. Pay attention to this video, please. 21st century looks a lot like the first century. Listen to what it says in 2 Timothy chapter 3. You should know this, Timothy, that in the last days there will be very difficult times. How many of you would agree that we live in very difficult times? Everybody agree on that one? Okay. For people will love only themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents, and ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving and unforgiving. They will slander others and have no self-control. They will be cruel and hate what is good. They will betray their friends, be reckless, be puffed up with pride, and love pleasure rather than God. They will act religious, but they will reject the power that could make them godly. Stay away from people like that. Who is this talking about? This is not just the presidential election. This is about our world in general. This is kind of like the world we live in. This is very much like the world when Jesus came in at just the appointed time. Now, I'm going to be very honest with you. To me, that's exciting. Because you and I know that the darker something is, the more any light shines and can make a difference. Because wherever there is light, it always beats darkness. Always. You just, no matter how dark it is, if people will shine light, it will make darkness run away. And this is the world in which we live in. I believe that our world, I believe that our area, I believe that our city is not a Christian city by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think it is a post-Christian. I think it is a pre-Christian, which makes it the perfect place for Christians to shine the light of Christ. Why is it that the gospel was so very powerful in the first century? Well, look at what it says in Romans chapter 1, and you have it there in your bulletin. For I am not ashamed of this good news. That's the word gospel. I am not ashamed of the gospel about Christ. It is the power of God at work, saving everyone who believes, the Jew first and also the Gentile. This good news tells us how God makes us right in his sight. This is accomplished from start to finish by faith. As the scriptures say, it is through faith that a righteous person has life. Notice these 5 things. The gospel, it's all about Jesus. See, the gospel is not some set of beliefs. It is not some, okay, I want you to memorize these things and you've got the... No, the gospel is Jesus. He is the embodiment of it. You don't accept a group of beliefs. You accept the person of Jesus. And the person of Jesus is the one who has the power to save everyone who believes. I love this. There is not a person that you and I are going to run into this next week that if they accept Jesus, they cannot be saved. Whoever calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. How many of you can think of a really bad person? I mean, a really, really bad person. Raise your hand. Think about it. You can think of somebody really, really bad. Didn't say point at them. I just said raise your hand if you can think of one. Okay? Now, whoever came to your mind, that person can be saved if they simply believe in Jesus. If they simply accept him. No matter who it is. Listen, you and I can run into, and there are some bad people in this world. There are some people who have done horrible things. But there is no one that God will bring you before that you could look at and go, oh man, there's no hope for this one. No, nobody. Why? Because Jesus can save anyone. He is able to transform anyone's life, making them right with God. You always hear people go, but do you think he could even save? And they'll give me a name. It's usually some body who politically or something is just a horrible person. Someone who has killed a lot of people. Someone who has done. Let me tell you something. Nobody is outside of the reach of God's grace. There is no one who is so bad that God cannot change them and Jesus cannot make them right with God. Now, the wonderful thing is, no matter who I'm talking to, no matter what position they hold, no matter what they've done, I know that the person of Jesus who I am presenting to them is capable of transforming their life if they will accept him, if they will follow him. Oh, that gives us a wonderful upper hand in any discussion with whoever that might be. Now, here's the deal. It's accomplished through faith, not works. It's not because of anything you and I can do. For by grace you have been saved through faith. That not of yourself. It is the gift of God. All of this is accomplished by faith. And it's also lived out by faith. See, it's not, well, okay, so I can accept Jesus, but then can I do it? It's all going to be by faith. I remember years ago, we were in the old building across the way, and we were having an outdoor service, and we had taken the great big ladder, and we leaned it up against the building. How many of you remember that? Anybody remember that? Some of you were there, some of you are there, but age is setting in on you, so you don't remember. And anyway, there was the ladder, and we were talking about this ladder going to God. And we said, how many of you believe that Mother Teresa is a really, really good person? And everybody out there, oh yeah, no man, that lady, she is something. So we climbed up the ladder a few rungs, and we put her up there, and bam, put her name. And then we asked the question, how many of you think that probably Billy Graham ranks as a pretty good person? And everybody goes, yeah, no, today he's 95, 96 years old, no scandal, no nothing, you know. I go, God, just anybody that can make it that long and somebody not have dirt on, something's up. This is a great guy. So we climbed up the ladder and we put Billy Graham up there. And then I said, okay, with that as where we are, where would you put yourself? And everybody went, because the bottom line is when Mother Teresa and Billy Graham are there, you and I are definitely down a few rungs. Would you agree? And so we just kind of put ourselves down here somewhere, kind of on the human area right there. And the problem with all of that is no matter where it is, that ladder still doesn't make it to heaven. It's not a matter of how high you think you are on the rung of the ladder to heaven. The problem is the ladder of works will never get you to heaven. And that's just one of those realities that we have to understand. It is all by faith. It is lived by faith. Not by what I can pull off, not by what you can pull off. But it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believes. As I was thinking that day on contagious Christianity, and I was kind of going over the book of Acts in my mind and kind of going through it, another phrase jumped out at me. Pandemic Christianity. The book of Acts is a study in pandemic Christianity. You know, that word pandemic hadn't been around a long time. At least we haven't heard it. Now it gets used quite a bit, right? We hear about this new flu or this new something, and you'll see some map will go, and, you know, if this goes and it gets transmitted, and then and the map kind of explodes apart and kind of goes everywhere, and you just feel sick just looking at the map, right? And I mean, let's be honest, we're all kind of living on this edge of Zika, right? You know, we used to carry, you know, ladies used to carry in their purses, you know, cologne. Now they carry bug spray. Yesterday at a wedding, had a wonderful day, and they put little bottles of bug spray for everybody. And I thought, oh, how Zika-ish of us. And that's wonderful. They didn't have one for the pastor. He can get eaten up, but it's okay. He's not pregnant. It's okay. So, well, anyway. So as we look at this whole thing, and you do, we get this idea, but when I think of it in the book of Acts, and I think about this little group of 120 people in an upper room, and things start from there, and then by the end of the book of Acts, you see that people are saying, you have completely overtaken and filled this entire city of Jerusalem with your gospel. And it goes on to chapter 17, and it says, these people have turned the whole world upside down. That's what I call a pandemic. That is something that just completely turns everything upside down. Oh, what a wonderful, wonderful thought that maybe God in this 21st century could use us to start another pandemic and do some things that are so big that our city, that our state, maybe even our country and parts of our world would be affected. Let me tell you, it's already happening in certain parts of the world. People by the hundreds and the thousands, and in some cases, millions of people are being saved. I remember a few years ago, David and I were at a conference up in Orlando, and this guy got up and he said, you know, our 10-year goal is to see 10 million people saved. And you know, it's been 3 years, and we have names of 3.5 million people that have come to faith in Christ and blah, blah, blah. And as he's talking, to be honest with you, something inside of me is going, yeah, right. I don't know if I can trust this guy or not. This is kind of crazy. And then the next guy that got up was the guy up here, Kennedy from Coral Ridge. And he got up, and I mean, he is prim and proper. I mean, and he gets up, and the guy hands him a little baton that they were using and handed it to him. And he got it, and he said, I want you to know that everything this man just told you is true. And I went, ooh. When Kennedy says it's true, it's true. Well, that Kennedy. I'm not saying all Kennedys, but that Kennedy. It's amazing what God is doing. In the next few months, I want us to go through the book of Acts. And here's how we're going to divide it. First of all, you as individuals, you personally, I want you to read and study the book of Acts on your own. I want you to do that. I want you to discover some things on your own. I want you to read it, and I want you to go to the Bible with an expectation and say, God, show me something that can change my life. Show me something that I can do tomorrow. Show me something that I can do this week, that I can be a part of this. Show me. Now, I've listed several things that can help you. Some helps that will go along. Maybe a commentary, maybe a video, maybe the Through the Word app. All of these things will just help you get greater clarity to the book of Acts. But I want you to go and learn it for yourself and get something out of it. And then in the coming weeks, here in our rows that we are sitting, we are going to sit down and we're going to talk about 10 characteristics that we see in the book of Acts, 10 characteristics of pandemic Christianity. What is it that was happening? Then, when we go in circles, when we go in our groups, then we will figure out how to apply these characteristics to our life. Okay? So for those of you who say, so are you going to do a verse-by-verse study of the book of Acts? The answer is no. You're going to do a verse-by-verse study of the book of Acts. It's your job to study the book. We're going to come behind and we're going to find 10 characteristics. And I'm going to be honest, this doesn't happen often. But on the 4th of July, the Lord gave me 10 weeks of messages. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I better write this down because my memory will not make it to the 5th of July. So I wrote them all down. And then we sat down as a team and we looked at them and kind of worked at them and got it. But here it is, 10 characteristics. If these things were real and happening in our midst and around us, it would definitely change things. It would not be church as usual. 10 characteristics. And then when you just sit around in circles and go, okay, now, how do we do this? How do I do this in school? How do I do this in my office? How do I do this in my job? How do I do it in this job? How does this lived out in my neighborhood? How do I do it in this climate where things are not conducive to freedom and things? How do we do this? Let me tell you something. They did it in the first century in a pre-Christian environment. And I believe our pre-Christian environment is just the right time for God to do it again. But I want you to remember something as you're going through the book. The book is called, it's the Acts of the Apostles. The Acts of the Apostles. It's not called the dreams of the followers of Christ. I mean, dreaming is wonderful. How many like dreams? Yes, because that usually means we're asleep. Okay? Dreams are wonderful. And the dreams of the followers of Christ, I think it's great to dream. But I think it's important to wake up and do. See, it's not just the dreams of the followers of Christ. It's not the good intentions of the followers of Christ. If I were to ask you today and go around and say, do you want the world to be saved? I think most of you would go, yeah. Do you want people's lives to be transformed? Yes. Do you want things to be different in the people around you? Yes, we want that. We all have the best of intentions. But the best intentions don't get it done. It has to be the acts. It's not just the good preaching of a few good people. That won't do it. It takes a lot more than just a few people preaching to get the work done. No, it takes, as it said back in Psalm 107, it takes everyone whom God has done something for to speak out. At Psalm 107, as I've been going over it the last couple mornings, and it took me 2 mornings because it's kind of big. And as I'm going through it, I'm seeing how God, finds these people that are in the desert, and you see these people that are going through famine, and you get these people that are captive, and you see these people who are having very difficult business venture stuff, and you see these people, and in every one of the situations it talks about things get really bad, and then they call out to God. God steps in. Says, okay, you called out. God steps in. Now speak out about what God has done. When you give the glory to Him, when you speak out about Him, that is what gets people's attention, because everybody is living in that wilderness, is living in that difficult time, in that difficult situation. They're wanting to know, how do you get out of this? If God has blessed you, if God has shown you, then speak out. You know, there's a lot of people that are sitting here today that God could do some amazing things through you if you would simply say, here I am, Lord, use me. There was a man who came to our Bible Institute in Peru. He and his wife. And when they walked on the premises, okay, they each had a beer box. Now, why do you go to Bible college with a box of beer? Well, it wasn't really beer. They just didn't have any suitcases. And all of their earthly belongings of a couple fit in 2 beer boxes. And they came there. And Dad said, what are you doing? And they said, we know that God wants us to serve Him. And we're here. We want to learn how. Okay? So they got them enrolled, and they went. The entire first year, this man did not pass one quiz or one test. Not one. You're talking the bottom of the barrel. We're talking the personality and the intellectual drive of a rock. It just wasn't there. And I am sure there were people going, you know, I really think you should try sweeping or doing something else. He just hung in there. No, I know God has called me. Today, last I heard, he has 6 or 7 churches that have come out of his church. All of his children have graduated from university. His church, I hear, it's been a long time since I've been there, is immaculate. It is extremely organized. Hundreds of people have come to know the Lord through a man who had all his earthly belongings in one box and didn't pass a test the entire first year of Bible college. The only thing I can complain about this guy is he is adamant about wearing a tie, and everybody around him must wear a tie too. That's the only complaint I got about the guy. But other than that, I have to tip my hat off to this man. You just go, what does it have to do with me? Let me ask you something. Do you have more going for you than a beer box of stuff and a brain that won't pass a single test in a year? If you do, what could God do through you? We beg for people to put their name up on the back board to do a group. Why? Why? Why don't we just say, Lord, here am I. Use me. You read in the book, of Acts, and you get to this chapter, and there's a guy going with authority to go put everybody in jail in Damascus, and his name is Saul. And on the way there, he has an encounter with a light and Jesus, and it says, go into Damascus. The next day or a couple days later, there's a guy named Ananias. And the Holy Spirit comes to Ananias and says, Ananias? And Ananias says, yes, Lord. Anybody that a voice, an audible voice is coming to you and calls you by name, your response is, yes, Lord. You got that? Yes, Lord. Ananias, I want you to go meet this guy at such and such an address. His name is Saul. He is expecting a guy named Ananias. That's why I'm talking to you, Ananias, so that you will go talk to him and tell him this is the mission God has for you for the rest of your life. Ananias goes, you know that guy's a really bad guy. Yes, I know all of that, Ananias, but I want you to go tell him this. So he goes and he tells him, and he says, Brother Saul, this is what the Lord has told me to tell you, and prays over him. Doesn't just say it long distance so he can get a head start. No, he actually touches him and prays over him, and Saul is changed. Let me ask you something. What else do you read in the Bible about Ananias? I can't think of another time he appears. Guess what? The part he had to play was just have the guts to go over to this dude and say, God told me to come talk to you. Please don't kill me. And I am here to pray for you. And all the fruit that Paul ever bore goes to the account of a little obedient Ananias. I mentioned Billy Graham a while ago. Billy Graham and a friend they heard that there was a revival, a big tent meeting, and a preacher was coming and blah, blah, blah. And so they went over. They got there a little late and it was packed. I mean, the tent was packed. They were about to leave and an usher at the back said, hey guys, don't leave. I know where there's a couple seats. Follow me. And they follow me. It takes them all the way to the front, because anytime there's a Baptist gathering, there's always seats in the front. It always happens. And so they went, and they sat there. And that night, Billy Graham was saved. Guess what? The hundreds and thousands of people that have come to Christ through Billy Graham all go back to a guy who was an usher, who found a seat for Billy Graham to sit down. What am I saying? You don't have to be Billy Graham. You don't have to be the Apostle Paul. You just have to be the Ananias. You just have to be the usher that says, Lord, here I am. Use me. The spread of the gospel is not because of dreams or good intentions or good preaching. The spread of the gospel was because of the actions and the deeds of the followers of Christ. That's what it was about. It was about men and women every day saying, okay, here it is. Here I am, Lord. What do you want me to do for you today? It wasn't always great big stuff, but it was many times little stuff that made a big difference for his kingdom. Doesn't take big. Just has to be the right thing at the right time. See, the spread of the gospel was not about going to church. It was about being the church. All of you as members that are members should have received at one point or another this little keychain, this little key tag. And what does it say? I am IBB. It doesn't say I go. It says I am. And that's all God is wanting, is for us to be what he wants us to be. And when we go about the business of being what he wants us to be, then all of a sudden, you get things like this. Acts chapter 2, verse 41. Those who believed what Peter said were baptized and added to the church that day, about 3,000 in all. All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper and the prayer. A deep sense of awe came over them all, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. And all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together in the temple each day, met in the home for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity all the time, praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. And in chapter 4 and verse 32, and all the believers were united in heart and mind, and they felt that what they owned was not their own, and they shared everything they had. The apostles testified powerfully to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and God's great blessing was upon them all. There were no needy people among them, because those who owned land and houses would sell them and bring in the money to the apostles to give to those in need. And in chapter 5 and in verse 42, it says, the apostles left the high council rejoicing that they had been counted worthy to suffer disgrace for the name of Jesus. And every day in the temple and from house to house, they continued to teach and preach this message: Jesus is the Messiah. And by the time we get to chapter 11 and verse 21, it says the power of the Lord was with them, and a large number of these Gentiles believed and turned to the Lord. See, it's when this kind of stuff happens and becomes a reality in our midst that Acts 29 is now written. And it continues to be a part of the wonderful story of what God wants to do in our world. Let us pray. Lord, I come before you today. And Lord, yes, I'm a little excited. I'm a little excited because, Lord, I know all this comes from you. I'm just not this smart. And yet you laid out the roadmap. You laid out the plan on the 4th of July. And now, Lord, over the next 3 months, September, October, November, we get to not only study these things, we get to do these things. Because, Lord, just studying them, Lord, we already know way more than we're doing. But, Lord, you want to see the acts of your followers in this century. And I pray that you would find us worthy and by faith following you each day. I pray that the chapter of Acts 29 that you've given each of us here to write, that we will write our verse, that we will make the difference that you want to make through us, that we together might write a chapter in the story of this area, this neighborhood, this city, that will not bring honor to our name, not make our church name shine above others. No, that would not really be that big of a deal. Lord, the important thing is that your name be exalted, that the world would see you, because, Lord, you are what this world needs. I pray that you would help us, that you would guide us, and that we would be willing to be used by you in writing this new chapter. And I thank you for it all.